Hello and welcome to Future Commerce, the podcast about the next generation of commerce. I'm Philip.
And I'm Brian. And today we have legendary subscription business with us, ButcherBox, and two incredible guests from their team, Lesley Mottla, Chief Product and Experience Officer, and Kiran Smith, Chief Marketing Officer. Welcome to both of you. Excited to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Ooh, everybody knows I want to believe everybody knows the brand. You built a monster business. Congratulations. Story is often told now. What are some of the innovations that you think are sort of key to the future of commerce right now for ButcherBox? What are you building?
Sure, happy to start. I think it's a really exciting time in e-commerce. I mean, as you know, it's super competitive. People have a lot of choices. So, number one, you have to innovate on all the basics because expectations have, really changed and consumers want more. So you have to do personalization and you have to be fast. And in our business, consumers want transparency. They want information about what they're buying. So that's a big differentiator for us that we're kind of building on. And then, we have all the things that everyone else is talking about that we're starting to look at, like AI, and how do we start to use, new tools and things like that throughout our complex ecosystem. So those are some of the things, that we're thinking about.
It's so cool. I think you face a challenge that that not many businesses out there face, which is that you are an online business selling steaks in a subscription model. So tell us a little bit more about how you think about the e-commerce landscape, because I think you're coming from a pretty unique perspective.
I think for us, it starts with who we're going after and the problem that we're trying to solve, right? Like it's the basic tenets of what we're trying to do is to be able for people to give them solutions for their most basic needs, right? Is mealtime, right? How do we help solve for that? And starting with that and then thinking how e-commerce can be a part of it, how a subscription model isn't a burden, it actually is a benefit, knowing the predictability of it, knowing the reliability of it. For us, that's somewhat of the basic tenet. And e-commerce is just a platform that we use to be able to have that relationship with our customers, right? So for us, it's an enabler, right? For that relationship. And that's how we look at it, is in terms of, okay, like if we are going to be the best partner for someone, for our members, and what does that look like? What is our e-commerce experience? What is our customer service experience? What's our delivery experience? Like it kind of stays at the center of that. So I would say the future of e-commerce on that side is how do you use the platform to create a more one-on-one personal relationship? All of that. That's really how we think of where the future needs to go.
There's something that's talked about a lot in the e-commerce circles is like the word platform gets a bit conflated because every software believes they have a platform. When you're building at the edge, like you're doing, Lesley, I have to believe that off-the-shelf software doesn't necessarily just doesn't deliver the thing that you really want to do for your customer, which is like a highly specific business, right? For a highly specific business model. Mm-hmm. How are you thinking about that sort of thing, and how much do you feel like you have to weigh the build versus buy at this point in your journey? Now it's a $600 million plus business.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. And like many companies, the company made technical decisions and grew out of those technical decisions, and so you definitely come to a point where you have to really take a hard look at things and figure out what's the platform or pieces that are going to kind of get you to the next level. And actually, I've been at ButcherBox for like 2.5 years, and that was kind of one of the first things that, we started to look at. So we're really focused on more of a headless situation where we are leveraging, some aspects of kind of core e-commerce tools, but where we have a lot of flexibility and extensibility to build for our ecosystem, which again is like, from an e-commerce standpoint, it's both for the customer as well as all those like supply chain and logistics elements and operational elements that are involved in our business. So we really are trying to continue to have something that's very flexible and extensible.
That makes sense, because I think your customer journey has got to be pretty unique. Like the way that someone finds the brands and then walks through the purchase of actually committing to ButcherBox, because I don't think it's just a purchase. Actually, I think it's like it's beyond a purchase. It's a commitment. And so tell me more about how that technical architecture helps with that customer journey. And maybe the best place to start would probably be the customer journey. Talk a little bit more about that, and then we can get more into like how that technical architecture has enabled you to address that journey.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think, ButcherBox traditionally we have been a subscription option, but we're building on that. Kiran especially can talk about that a little bit later. We're for basically segments of people, but basically the way it works now is, you're presented with some options for plans that we've built that fit, different lifestyles, basically. So some people want us to kind of pick and choose for them. So we've got, curated plans. Some people want pure customization. So they're able to kind of pick and choose what they put in their box. There's a lot of flexibility with delivery times and things like that. So that's like the beginning of the journey. But the most important in the journey is really around kind of that onboarding and helping you settle into a subscription, because subscriptions, especially with regards to food, you want to make people successful. And we've done a lot of research with people who have rate their first meal that they've cooked with ButcherBox as successful. Their retention rates are really high. So Kiran can talk more about like the elements around that experience, like cooking classes and things like that. I'll turn it over to her on that part.
That's where we've seen a lot of the engagement with our customers, is that to get for someone from their first box to the next box to the third, right? Like if we get that pattern, by the time they get to the third box, we know the level of success, likelihood of retention is much higher. So our jobs is really in that first 90 days. How do you make someone really see the value of having the subscription? That doesn't mean just getting the meat to their door. It's how do you help them work through their box? How do you give them the inspiration, the ideas, weekend ideas, weeknight, easy meals, solutions, like all of those things, because the value that they see in the inspiration is more than just the protein. It is about the solutions that you offer around it. And so part of it is, our goal is to create confident cooks, right? People who feel really good about the proteins that they're serving, that feel really good about the meals they're preparing, because it goes back from a marketing standpoint, is that's the illogical motions that you have, right? And that's really what we're going to. It's not about the it's a healthy protein, it's humanely raised. It is about how you feel when you serve that meal, when you serve that protein. It's that for us is that point of where they see the true value in the offering.
We're talking about the customer, right? You're talking about the customer and finding this customer. Any company building out at the edge and trying to acquire new customers into, high LTV business models, which, by the way, Kiran, this is like your jam.
This is so fun.
The last few years for you have been in, storied brands that are, globally recognized brands, iRobot and Brookstone and Stride Right. And you're used to thinking in this way. I think a lot of marketers are, and marketing leadership probably aren't thinking of that. What is your prior experience, not to put you on the spot in front of, everybody, what was your prior experience help to inform this as like a different category? Like, what can you bring from that sort of mindset of marketing leadership, and maybe even expanding the tent a bit with the type of customer that you're trying to seek in your next phase of growth?
I've been fortunate because with every role that I've taken, I've been able to take learnings from the last one and apply them to the new one. And for me, it's always like, and then what's next to learn? And in this one is probably the most fun I've had, only because we're at the very beginning of our marketing journey, versus in some of the brands I've been before, they've tried that, they've done that, they've been done. And for us, it's all new, uncharted territory, right? And so to be able to build out on that, to build out on segmentation, personalization, the tools that you have, marketing mix, all like as a marketer, it's a dream, right? Because we have a phenomenal brand, a phenomenal foundation, right? It's a healthy company. It's continuing to grow. Like that for me, you couldn't lay out a better like playbook for a marketer to be like, okay, now let's go have some fun, because you know that when you start implementing some of the things, they work because they've worked before. They work. You do them well. It's proven, right? And that is a really fun position to be in. And I'll say like the advantage that I have from my past experiences is I've seen the plays run. You know what the pitfalls are. You know what the challenges are going to be. And by having had that experience, you're able to navigate it just more, not easily, but just a little bit more clearly in terms of like, all right, we're going to keep moving because we know we're going to get there. So I think that for me is like the best part of it.
Do you think that the sort of evangelism, maybe not on ButcherBox's behalf, but maybe like the e-commerce or retail industry itself has evangelized this idea that you had arbitrage early on in affiliate revenues paid out? There's a story that's been going around for a couple of years now. ButcherBox spent over $1 million, paid out over $1 million to affiliates in an early experimental in a business model, high growth on Instagram. How much of that is like now urban legend versus like the actual strategy?
The strategy has evolved, but it is absolutely true in terms of that's where we started. I mean, the timing that Mike had when he started this company was very fortunate in terms of what the trends were in the market. But he started it from a very pure place of like truly he was creating a side hustle for himself and his family, and then like a group of people, and so how he went at it was never to build a $500 million company, right? He started with this, and I think the ability to start of how you think in that mindset of when you're first going, it is about influencers, right? It is about people who are like, hey, do you mind talking about me? How that's evolved now is we are the size that we are. So influence and affiliates still play a very key part of our marketing mix, but now we also have other channels in which we're sending out our message. But our best way to do it is by our own members talking about it, and like how we tap into that and how we get our members to refer us. There is no better marketing. I would be the happiest person if we could stop spending anything on marketing because our members do all the work for us. Like that's an ideal state, but that is for us like where we need to continue to head towards in terms of that evangelism, that because that's the purest form of marketing, because people believe they're friends.
I love that. Yeah. It's interesting that feedback cycle, it's both to you and to your other customers and to prospective customers, right? And one of the things that is a little bit of a theory right now that we've been kind of playing with at Future Commerce is the idea that marketing and product need to come closer together. And lo and behold, we have marketing and product on the phone at the same
We're your
time.
people.
And
Wow.
I have to ask, like, as you've evolved as a business, and I know Kiran, you're a little bit new to the business, but how has the connection and the interplay between marketing and product and experience it changed as the business has matured? And Lesley, why don't we start with you on this? What have you seen as far as that connection point and breaking down that silo?
Yeah, it's such a great question, and Kiran and I are all over this and talking about it every day, and I'm so fortunate to have her as a partner. I think when I arrived, it was more of the classic siloed situation, right, where marketing was over here. The product team actually was really small at that time. And not well formed. And, it was kind of a lot of like, hey, can you guys do this? And here's my list of things, and you guys do this. And that's like no offense to anyone or anything like that. And so what Kiran and I have really worked on is obviously at the executive level, we're kind of working together on like the strategy for the company, right? And the strategy for the members. And, I think what's great is we both have a really good understanding of like, these things don't operate separately. The customer doesn't think about, marketing, or like the customer is the customer, and the customer is, going to have their journey. And so we can't think in that way, those siloed ways. And so we work really, really closely together on on our execution plans, on looking at all of the customer data, on, determining how we're going to like grow our business from a retention standpoint and deliver great things for customers. So it definitely, what's great is she and I have this like very good relationship. What we're working on now, though, is like our teams, because our teams kind of come to the table with very different levels of experience, so that it's not as clear for them. So that's kind of where we're working on it at the team level, really.
Yeah, just to circle back around there then, as you're collecting customer feedback and you're thinking about voice of the customer, how is that data then like being used? Is it sort of centralized and then you all are coming back around it to figure out what you need to do with it? Or is it, how is it being collected? How is it being leveraged? How is the information flowing back and forth between marketing and product?
Yeah, we have on my team, I've got some folks who are focused on customer insights, right, and really from a member experience standpoint. So we're looking at we've got a end-to-end journey member satisfaction metric that we constantly look at. We use Net Promoter. We look at different parts of the journey from a metric standpoint, like delivery. How are we doing at that? So we try to break it out. Obviously, we have customer support, and we get leverage a lot of information there. And then we do a lot of ethnographics as well, or research around particular topics or maybe issues or problems or things like that. So we have a pretty well-functioning insights team that where we all get together and we review that information. And then we have analysts kind of in the groups. Kiran can talk more about like the marketing side of that and the consumption of that information.
I think it's what I love is it's in the ethos of the company in terms of insights, like how the need for insights, the value of insights. And I'll say like what Lesley and her team, as part of the insight, it's driving new product innovation. What products are we going after is coming out of the work that Lesley and her teams are doing with our members of getting like, where do they see the value? What are the, and I think I love that it's starting from there. It's not a random R&D person on the side being like, what we should do next is, it is coming from members saying, what I'd love to see from you is this. And you're like, oh, yeah, we could do that. And it starts from there. I think the other thing is like, we feel very comfortable going to our members and asking their opinions. How do you think we did? What do you think if we, if we went into this area? Like we're comfortable asking them. And what's really great about it is they love engaging with it. You go back to, we're interested in doing a member survey. The number of hands that are raised figuratively, in terms of like, we'd love to participate. Like, I think that's a really good indication of people caring about the brand, and us really wanting to listen. It's not listening for what we want to hear. It's like, there are times that we, like what Lesley's group has brought back to us is like, all right, guys, we got some work to do. And I love that the company is like, okay, like they won't dismiss it because they know it's coming from really good validated data that was intelligently, taken. And then as they present the problems, like they're going towards solutions, which is really cool.
Can I kind of dive into this a little bit? If I asked 10 of our guests, 10 brands that came onto the podcast, if they were data-driven, 11 of them would say yes. Like, everyone's data-driven, right?
Totally.
Like I know that's a thing we all think we are doing, but I think what I realize now in having worked with some very elite, global brands is that there's a level of intuition that a merchandiser has, and like that is a skill that's developed over time. Somebody who has a next level intuition about not only who their customer is, but anticipating what that customer needs and not waiting until the customer is banging the desk before they have to deliver it to them. And nowadays, I find that the script has flipped a bit in that we're waiting for the data to tell us when something's wrong without having the intuition first. I think I just made the point that I was trying to get you to make. How much of that do you try to balance? Like, I think that there's like, it's a little bit of a double-edged sword where the data has to confirm your intuition, but is that just making stellar hires that just know that, or do you cultivate that in an organization, and how?
I would say, first of all, it starts with Mike, because Mike, I would say, excels. Our CEO excels at this, where he has really good instincts. Like, I know something's not right there. Like, I need you to dig in over there, because and so he's really good at finding that. I would say Lesley and I, part of the reason Mike brought us in is we are similar in terms of we don't need 100% certainty to make a decision. right? We're good with our gut tells us we're going this direction. The data, the early indicators look like it supports that. Let's go figure it out. What we're trying and continue. And Lesley talked about how we're trying to get that behavior in our teams as well. As we don't need perfect data to make a decision, because otherwise we'll just be paralyzed. We'll be slow. We're not going, and we would rather make an imperfect decision and be wrong some of the times rather than wait and have that extensive period of time. Because what we're also trying to break sometimes is you'll never have certainty. Something's going to change, right? So how do you just go with your gut most of the time and say, my experience taught me this, my instincts tell me this, I know, and we'll figure it out as we go. And so I would say that it is using data as an enabler, but not as the answer.
And how much culturally in the organization, maybe Lesley, you have a thought about this, is sometimes the data isn't so clear. And so now you're in a position of having to either justify what you already thought and then sort of undermining your position about how data-driven you really are. Like I believe that there are organizations who become somewhat wishy-washy because they don't know how to just make decisions and stick to a plan, despite what some indicators may be telling them along the way, right? And they effectively move to a state of inaction. How do you prevent that? It seems like you've prevented it pretty well, looking from the outside in.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because we actually talk about this a lot, and we talk about it. Mike talks about it a lot with the employees too, of how are we doing at decision making? We need to make decisions. We need to be comfortable. We need to be comfortable failing. We need to not get kind of sidelined or stuck. And so I think what we're trying to put in place is try to state the problem or opportunity that you're solving and just try to be really clear about that. If you have some data, that's great, to kind of support what we want to do or how we're going to solve that problem. We are also kind of building ways to easily get information, whether it's go talk to a few customers or look at some information. But to Kiran's point, maybe it's not going to be perfect. So the other thing that we're really big on is creating a very test and learn type of environment or prototyping type of environment where we're just trying to get things spun up quickly to get some feedback, so that we can kind of make decisions about we need to pursue more of this or, it's not working. So it's really just having that kind of mindset, the flexible mindset. And then I did want to say, on the data side of things, because I agree, people often say we're data driven and things like that. We're also really taking a step back to kind of, make sure we have a really strong data strategy and really define what that means, both from, it's a managed strategy to it's a proactive strategy to now we're using prediction techniques and things like that. So, and depending on the parts of the business, it could be in different places, but it is something that we take a step back and try to holistically look and talk about what our data strategy is.
The subscription meat company has an economist on staff. That's what it's like.
Yeah,
that's not a thing you hear in the DTC channels. Right.
One thing I did hear you say, and this I love this. I love this so much. You said, it's okay. Sometimes you need to just make a decision and fail sometimes, but also you're in a category. You're playing on legendary mode. There's the products that are around you, the products that are on you, and then there's the products that go in you, and your customers are literally consumers. You you can actually call them consumers and not feel weird about it. It's they eat your products. There's something really special about this category. I wrote a whole piece on this. I think that food and bev is it's one of my favorite categories because it is so contextual and special and in the moment and physical, and that's something that we don't all the rest of our lives spiraling out of that, and this category remains the same and always will. And so I wanted to ask, as if this is for you, Kiran, as you go and you start to think about how your customers are making purchases, and like what's a good decision to make. Oh, okay, well, if we fail this, no big deal, or this is a big deal. But what all of your product experiences are so contextual to the moment. Like if they drink the wrong glass of wine with their steak, it's going to ruin the experience. Like, don't drink white wine with steak, or do you? um, so I,
This is such a Brian Lang like line of questioning. You don't know, but
yeah.
yeah.
What do you do to help foster the context that's going to give people a good experience? And what sort of things do you put in place along the way? I heard you say like culinary like tips and tricks and experiences, but like to give me more. What else you got?
I spent 10 years in grocery when a while back, and the experience that I had there was we did a marketing program where we were helping people solve dinner, and this is relevant to the story. And I was not a cook. My husband did all the cooking. And that program that we did made me into not only like it gave me the confidence, but it transformed our lives because we as a family have family dinner 4 or 5 times a week. And it's important. I have 3 daughters. It is like a core to our family, and they talk about it and they never realized how unusual that was until they got to know their friends. That transformative experience 20 years later is what I strive for us as ButcherBox to do, which is to create that moment where someone feels that this brand made their lives better, and that food is at the center of everything, right? It's the center of your plate. It's the center of your family. It's the center of the gathering table. It's a center, right? And being a part of that is a privilege, right? To be part of someone's family dynamic or home dynamic, and the confidence that has, and how that confidence builds out to the rest of your life. We can be a part of that. And like, I think that for me, it's not about the protein, right? It is about what we create around it. And that both that irrational desire and that irrational emotion that we talk about, like that's what that is. And that's what we strive for to create with our members. And for me, that's, as you think about, like, let's start with that. And what does that mean? How do we get there? How do we get someone there and feeling that way and feeling really good? That's what we strive for.
And how do you remove the variables? I think that's the question is like, there must be some sort of tangible thing that you think about is like the imagery has to make sense. How personalized is that for the person? And how do you like sort of, how do you really control all of those endpoints as they come about, right?
It's an excellent question. We are at the beginning of that journey. That is why this is a really exciting role for me personally as a marketer, right? We're at the very beginning of that. And so how do you build a construct to be able to do that well, right? How do you get the right data to know who's in what segment? How do you now get the right creative to show up in terms that will resonate? How do you get the right content to be able to then feed that to them and help them along their journey? And then how do you have the right mechanisms in place for them to engage? Like that's what we're in the process of building out now. And that is for me a really fun space to be in.
I'd love to shift gears a little bit here. This has been so wonderful, by the way. What are your pet peeves? what are the things that
just sit down. Here we go.
Yeah. We were almost at the end, and then he asked the pet peeve question.
This is the new segment. We're bringing this one back.
What are some of the things that you just feel like are table stakes that most brands just drop the ball on, or what are some things that you just look for on day one to say like this immediate areas for improvement? Lesley, let's go to you first.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I probably have a lot. I am big on just really kind of auditing your own experience and journey, and I think a lot of companies maybe don't take the time to really audit, like I'm talking end to end, so that you have a good understanding of like, where are we doing well? Where are the opportunities? So I think that's one. And just getting other people to do that in the company, kind of training people to do that. That's one. And then I'm also like a kind of a big proponent of some of the old school techniques that may not be as popular. Like I love customer service, and I think customer service is a differentiator. Like it could be, an AI chatbot or whatever, but it also could be a person, and some brands it's really hard to find a phone number now, or it's hard to get a hold of people. And I
Wow.
just don't
wanna
agree with
clap.
that.
I wanna
Yeah.
clap.
So that's a little bit of a pet peeve.
Kiran.
I would say the pet peeve is when is drinking the Kool-Aid, right? Where like all of a sudden you've been in the company long enough and you lose your own perspective about the brand and the experience and the product and the right and not opening yourself up to be like, what do you mean we're not perfect? What do you mean we're not doing everything? Or what do you mean this hamster wheel is not the right hamster wheel to be on, right? Like all of those things I'd say are part of like one of my pet peeves is like, can we take a pause moment for a second and just to Leslie's point, like do an audit. And then I would say the other pet peeve is like taking some of the emotion out of conversations. It's not personal. It's not, right? We're making business decisions, right? We are being able to have like shepherd some of those conversations probably more effectively would be good, but you're just catching me on that day. Maybe we should take that part out.
We'll make a note. Definitely not going to be YouTube short. I think that there's, we all have them, right? And I think maybe it takes a little bit of introspection to say like, what are the things that like I feel like are obvious wins when you first walk into an organization, and that's, I think having that off the top of your head is. I do think that there is an element of like true believer, especially when a brand was founded around a very specific like dietary need or function, like as the persona of the founder is so ingrained into the brand itself, and the mission of the brand has become synonymous, right? And so and those things also, it's like any strength overextended become a weakness. You can become sort of a disciple. And what you need is really just discipline to say, I am I need to be the chief critic of who we are and what we put out into the world, and see it through the customer's eyes. I couldn't have said it better.
I love that. I think I would say there are many companies that say they're mission driven. I will tell you, this is the first company I've ever worked for that truly is mission driven. Like the simplicity of that, of saying like decision making becomes a lot easier in a company like ours when you could say like, is it right for the farmer, the animal, the member? Like, like having the simplicity of that construct, being like, okay, then then we head in this direction. Like it's a pretty special place to be with that level of. With Mike starting it, but having it continue 7 years later to be the foundation of the business is pretty cool.
Gosh, we talk about building relationships with customers and building community and so on, but something that gets lost in that often is building community and relationship and building a good environment for your suppliers as well, and that almost seems like building that for your suppliers and your employees first is like, I kind of hear you saying like that's number one, and then your customers will follow. Is that I'm putting words in your mouth?
It's true though. I mean, if you look at where they started off at, it is that is exactly where they started. It's like, what are the right partnerships we need to have to make this work? And that was with the farmers, and how we think about the decision making is very much that was from the beginning.
Yeah, and I think on the employee side, we really, really invest in, culture and feedback and transparency. And to Kiran's point, even from a cultural standpoint, it's probably the best place that I've ever worked from a openness and kind of how we think about the employee experience as like really, really key to the business.
Well, I know we're coming up on time here, and we always want to get in our last question because it's always interesting to see where people land on this. So, to ButcherBox, and I'll Kiran, why don't we start with you, and Lesley, and with you. What is the future of commerce to you?
Good question. I would say this continued evolution that we have in terms of personalization is gonna continue to have to grow. How you create an experience for a consumer that feels that it is one-to-one with them, making them feel special, making them feel valued, making them feel like how you do that in a way that is done with a genuine the coming from a genuine place, I think, is where we can have to continue to head. And that's hard, especially as you get bigger and bigger as your supply, right? And I think that this next generation of consumers is looking for much more transparency than our generation, right? Their expectations, their base expectations are very different. And how we continue to build towards meeting their needs and meeting them where they are, I think is going to have to be where commerce heads as well.
Yeah, and I think, I completely agree with that. I think it's, to me, the future of e-commerce, it's multidimensional, right? It has to be multidimensional, and the companies that think multidimensionally are going to be really successful, because you're putting your customer in the middle, but you've got all these things that you need to think about. You need to think about, the journey. You need to think about your data. You need to think about, in our case, logistics, supply chain, sustainability, like the trends around sustainability and what consumers demand. So I do think it's it's just it's very multidimensional, and the companies that think in that way are gonna win.
I love that.
You don't know this, but ButcherBox team is like, this is music to Brian's ears. All of what you just said, it probably relates back to some think piece he's written at some point.
It's true.
Very much up our alley, and I know that our audience will have appreciated it. Thank you so much for all of your time, and thank you for being so just genuine about the way that you're approaching solving these really hard problems, because they're hard problems to solve in a business. And I think it seems very obvious to me that ButcherBox has created the success that you have based on the culture and the attitudes of the people and the minds that have come alongside to help the mission. So thank you so much. That is the future of commerce. Thank you all. And thank you so much for listening to Future Commerce. You can find more episodes of this podcast and all Future Commerce properties at futurecommerce.com. And if you want to find us in your inbox twice a week, telling you about what we think the future is through the lens of what is happening in the world of brand, direct-to-consumer marketplace, and experiences, you can do that at futurecommerce.com/subscribe. Subscribe to the census. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Future Commerce.